The night sky above Earth had always been beautiful. For thousands of years, humans had looked up at the stars with wonder, dreaming of what might be waiting out there. Some imagined friends among the stars, others feared monsters. But deep down, every person carried a hope that humanity was not alone, and that when contact finally came, it would bring peace, knowledge, and unity. That hope died the day the Galactic Council spoke. It began as a sudden transmission, broadcast across every human communication network. Scientists thought at first it was a mistake, some strange cosmic signal bouncing across the void. But then the words became clear, translated into every human language by technology far beyond human reach. Humans of Earth, the message began. Cold and merciless, you are a young and reckless species. Your growth has been unchecked, your expansion unapproved. You spread like fire across the stars without permission, without control. This cannot continue. You will stop at once, or you will be destroyed. The world fell into silence. In crowded cities and lonely farmhouses, in schools and marketplaces, people stopped and stared at the glowing screens. Mothers held their children close. Soldiers stood stiff and uneasy. Leaders of nations sat pale-faced as the truth sank in. Humanity was not only not alone, but the galaxy that waited beyond was not welcoming. The Galactic Council. That was the name the aliens gave themselves. They were not explorers or friends. They were rulers, conquerors dressed in the mask of order. For thousands of years they had commanded the stars, deciding which species lived freely and which bowed in chains. To them, humanity was not special. It was not unique. It was only another problem to crush beneath their vast empire. But for the people of Earth, the message cut deeper than any blade. The Council did not come with an offer of peace. They did not offer friendship or even warning. They came with a threat, a demand, a command that humanity surrender its destiny and return to the shadows of its homeworld. In the United Earth Assembly, leaders gathered in urgency. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scholars filled the great chamber, their voices tense and sharp. The question hung heavy in the air. What was humanity to do? Could Earth, still fragile in its steps into space, truly stand against a power that ruled entire galaxies? Some argued for surrender. They said humanity was not ready, not strong enough. They feared extinction if they resisted. Others stood firm and defiant. They said that surrender would not save them, it would only chain them forever. But behind the debates and the speeches, a quiet truth echoed in every human heart. Humanity had always been underestimated. Long ago, when the first explorers crossed oceans, the world thought them foolish. When the first machines flew, people laughed. When the first rockets left the Earth, some said it was impossible. And yet time after time humanity had risen, had endured, had proved stronger than anyone believed. Now the challenge was greater than ever. The enemy was not hunger, nor disease, nor war among themselves. The enemy was the galaxy itself, a council of powers that thought Earth weak, unstable, unworthy of freedom. As the council's message ended, the stars seemed colder than before. The Earth, small and blue, spun in silence beneath the threat of an empire it had never seen. And yet, somewhere in the quiet, a spark was lit. A spark of defiance, a whisper that grew in the hearts of many. We will not bow. The warning from the stars had arrived. The future of humanity had changed forever. But no one in the council, no one across the galaxy, truly understood what they had awakened. For when humanity is threatened, it does not simply surrender. It remembers, it unites, and it fights. Far away from Earth, in the shining halls of the Galactic Council, the message had already been declared. The aliens believed the matter was simple. One transmission would be enough to bring humans to their knees. The Council had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. It was not a rule of kindness, but of power and fear. Species that resisted were crushed. Species that obeyed were allowed to survive, though never as equals. The Council saw itself as the guardian of order, the master of civilization. To them, The galaxy was a chessboard, and every living world was a piece to be moved at their command. The council chamber itself was a place of splendor and cruelty. High pillars of crystal light rose into the sky, and banners of countless conquered races hung across the walls. Delegates of every great species sat in their seats, their strange forms glowing, armored or shrouded in shadow. They spoke in dozens of voices, but all with the same tone: pride, arrogance, and certainty. The Karath, lizard-like beings with scales as hard as stone, hissed with confidence. The humans will kneel. They are young and wild, but their flame will die quickly. We will teach them obedience. The Valen, tall and ghostly with eyes like burning stars, spoke coldly. They are primitives. Their ships are fragile. Their armies are nothing compared to our fleets. The war, if it comes, will last no longer than a season. From the shadows, the Archon, a species of metallic beings who lived half in machine and half in flesh, gave their judgment. Humans expand. Too quickly. If they spread, they will challenge the balance of power. It is better to destroy them now before they grow dangerous. The chamber filled with laughter, with harsh tones and cruel certainty. The council had fought many wars before. Small rebellions had flared across the centuries, but every time, the council's fleets had crushed them. No species had resisted, for long. No species had ever dared to declare war on the council. To them, humanity was not a threat. It was a problem, a bug crawling too far from its nest. But what they did not understand, what they could not imagine, was the human spirit. They had measured humanity by ships and numbers, by weapons and colonies. But they had not measured its will. On Earth, people feared, but they also remembered. Humanity had been tested before, by ice ages, by plagues, by wars that nearly ended the world. Again and again, humans had been pushed to the edge of destruction, and every time, they had clawed their way back, stronger than before. The Council, in its arrogance, believed power came only from armies, from fleets, from weapons. They forgot that power could also come from unity, from love of home, from the desperate will to survive. Yet as they sat in their great chamber, laughing at humanity's weakness, they did not see the danger growing. They did not hear the whisper spreading across Earth, the whisper that would soon become a roar. One small delegate, a frail creature from a lesser species, dared to speak. Its voice trembled. Counselors, forgive me, but perhaps you underestimate these humans. Reports speak of their courage. They are not like others. The Karath cut it short with a hiss. Silence. They are nothing. The chamber agreed. The decision was final. If humans resisted, they would be destroyed. The fleets would be sent. Earth would burn. And so the council turned its gaze away, already preparing its armies, already imagining the ease of victory. But arrogance is the blindfold of empires. And the Galactic Council, in all its ancient pride, was about to discover that some fires cannot be extinguished, because they burn not from power, but from the heart. When the transmission from the Council ended, Earth trembled. The message spread across every city, every colony, every station orbiting distant moons. Fear moved like a storm. Parents held their children tighter. Soldiers gripped their weapons with uncertainty. Scientists stared at the stars, knowing that behind their beauty lurked an empire that could destroy them all. Yet even in fear, humanity gathered. In the great halls of the United Earth Assembly, leaders and representatives from every nation came together. They sat beneath banners of their countries, but for the first time in history, all eyes were turned toward one fate, Earth's fate. The chamber buzzed with voices. Some leaders spoke with trembling caution. We cannot fight. The Council, they argued. Their fleets are vast, their weapons are beyond ours. If we resist, they will wipe us out. Our duty is survival. Better to kneel than to vanish. Others rose, their voices burning with fire. If we surrender now, they shouted, we do not save our children, we enslave them. The Council will rule every choice we make. They will own our future. Is that survival? No. That is death in chains. The arguments clashed like thunder. Every word carried weight, because every soul in the chamber knew the truth. Humanity stood at a crossroad. One path was surrender, a life of obedience. The other path was war, and perhaps destruction. Outside the halls, the debate raged among ordinary people too. In the streets of New York, in the villages of Africa, in the deserts of Australia, and in the crowded markets of Asia, people spoke of the council. Some whispered in fear, saying humanity was doomed. Others clenched their fists and declared they would rather fight to the last breath than kneel. In space stations above Mars, in the mining colonies of Jupiter's moons, workers and settlers listened as news poured in. They had built their lives with sweat and struggle in the harshest of places. To them, the idea of surrender tasted bitter. They had carved homes out of dust and ice. Would they now give it all away to masters who had never lifted a hand in their labor? Among the voices of fear and courage, a strange unity began to form. The people remembered their history. Humanity had never been gifted safety. Every step forward had been a struggle. They had crossed oceans, not knowing if land lay ahead. They had braved plagues and wars, nearly destroying themselves, only to rise again stronger. Humanity was not perfect, but it was resilient. A farmer in Kansas, speaking to a crowd in his town, put it simply, "We have always faced giants. The council is just another giant, and like before, we will stand." A young engineer on Mars, speaking through a broadcast, said with tears in her eyes, "If they take our freedom, then everything we built means nothing. I will fight. I will fight with my hands, with my tools, with my last breath if I must." That moment, the council's arrogance became humanity's strength. Where fear was expected to divide, it instead united. For the first time in history, nations once divided by borders and rivalries stood together. Humanity was no longer many voices, it was one. The assembly returned to silence after days of debate. Finally, an old leader stood and spoke words that would be remembered forever. His voice was steady, though his eyes carried the weight of centuries. "We do not choose this war, but we will not choose chains. If the council demands we kneel, then let them come. They will see that humanity does not break. They will see that we fight for more than power. We fight for freedom, for our children, for the right to exist as we are. Let history know we did not surrender." And with those words, the decision was made. Humanity would resist. The council believed fear would crush them. Instead, fear had become fire, and soon that fire would burn across the stars. The Galactic Council expected silence. They expected fear to freeze humanity. They thought Earth would bow, whisper apologies, and beg for mercy. But when the Council's fleets turned their eyes toward the blue planet, what came instead shook the galaxy. A transmission left Earth. It was not hidden, not quiet. It was sent on every channel, carried across every frequency, echoing into the deepest corners of space. Any ship, any station, any listening ear in the galaxy could hear it. The voice that spoke was strong. It was not the voice of one leader, but the voice of a people united. Behind every word was the weight of billions of human hearts. To the Galactic Council, the voice said, "We have heard your threat. You speak of control. You speak of obedience. You demand that we stop reaching for the stars. You threaten to erase us if we do not kneel. But we are not a people who kneel." The words rolled like thunder. For centuries, we have fought against the impossible. We crossed oceans when the world said it could not be done. We flew into the skies when they said mankind was meant to crawl. We walked on the moon when they called us dreamers. Every step we have taken has been against fear, against doubt, against death itself. And now you believe your threats will stop us? No, they will only make us stronger. The message spread like fire. On distant colonies, workers stopped and listened. In the farms of Earth, in the crowded cities, in the dark mines of moons, people lifted their heads with pride. It was their voice too, their declaration. From this day we declare this truth. Humanity will not surrender. Humanity will not bow. We choose freedom, even if the cost is war. If you come to our world with fleets, we will fight you in the void. If you land on our soil, we will fight you in the fields, in the mountains, in every street and home. If you burn our cities, we will rise from the ashes. You will not find us weak. You will find us unbreakable. The galaxy trembled. No species had ever spoken this way to the Council. Entire empires had been crushed before they dared to whisper defiance. Yet here was Earth, small and fragile in the eyes of the galaxy, standing tall with words that cut, sharper than blades. On Council worlds, the message was met with outrage. The Karath hissed in anger, their scales rippling with fury. Insult, blasphemy. These humans must be destroyed, every one of them. The Valen burned with cold fire, demanding fleets to march at once. The Arkan machines calculated, their voices sharp and metallic. This species is dangerous. If they resist now, imagine what they could become. They must be erased. But among the Council's many subjects, whispers began to spread. On worlds long conquered, where freedom was only a memory, people heard the human declaration. To them, it was like a spark in darkness. A fragile world had dared to say the words they had longed to say. No. Back on Earth, silence filled the chamber after the transmission was sent. The leaders knew what they had done. They had declared war on an empire older than their history, stronger than their fleets, larger than their dreams. And yet, in that silence, there was no regret. For the people of Earth understood something deeper than fear. Some battles are not about victory or defeat. Some battles are about who you are and what you refuse to become. They could die as slaves, or they could fight as free humans. The Council had threatened Earth with destruction. Earth had answered with defiance. And now, the war had truly begun. The Council did not wait long. Outrage burned in their halls, and pride demanded a swift answer. To them, Earth's declaration of war was an insult that could not be forgiven. Armadas were gathered, vast fleets of gleaming warships, their weapons forged in the fires of countless conquered worlds. When the order came, the fleets moved like a storm. From across the galaxy, hundreds of ships converged on human space. Their arrival blotted out the stars. The first target was Vera's Edge, a young human colony orbiting a small red sun. It was not a place of soldiers, but of settlers. Farmers, miners, children, ordinary people who had come to build a new home. The Council expected them to run. They expected them to surrender. Instead, they fought. Old freighters were turned into weapons. Mining ships fitted with crude cannons faced war cruisers thousands of times stronger. Colonists strapped explosives to cargo drones and hurled them at the enemy. Every hand, from farmer to mechanic, joined in the defense. The battle burned across the skies of Vera's Edge. Council fleets tore through the first line of resistance, but the humans refused to break. One miner, flying a tiny shuttle patched together with scraps, rammed directly into a Council destroyer. The explosion shook the void. The humans cheered, even as tears filled their eyes. News of the battle spread like wildfire. Across Earth and her colonies, people listened as transmissions arrived. Reports of bravery, of loss, of unyielding defiance. Families wept for the fallen, but their grief only hardened their resolve. At the moons of Kirene, another clash came. This time, human. Miners filled the tunnels with explosives, waiting for the Council to land. When alien soldiers marched into the caves, the humans set the charges. The mountains themselves roared as fire swallowed the invaders. Few humans survived, but the price the Council paid was heavy. In orbit above Mars, the first true fleet battle unfolded. Humanity's navy was small, its ships built more for exploration than war. Yet when the Council's armada arrived, the human fleet held its ground. The alien commanders expected panic. What they found was discipline. What they found was courage. Human ships moved with desperate creativity, striking from angles the Council had never considered. They used their weakness as strength, hiding in asteroid fields using gravity wells, turning wreckage into weapons. The battle lasted for hours. In the end, half the human fleet was gone. But the Council's armada, so sure of easy victory, limped away battered and scarred. For the first time in centuries, the Council had been slowed. The galaxy was watching. On worlds far and wide, people who lived under Council chains listened to the reports in secret. They whispered to one another in the dark. The humans fought them. The humans held them back. The Council can bleed. Back on Earth, the funerals began. Families lit candles for sons and daughters who would never return. Entire cities mourned. And yet, even in sorrow, there was pride. They had faced the greatest empire in the galaxy and survived. Children listened to stories of the battles. They did not hear only of death. They heard of courage. They heard of people who stood when surrender would have been easier. They heard of heroes. The Council had believed the first clash would break humanity. Instead, it forged them. Humanity now knew the cost. The war would be long. Many would fall. Entire colonies might burn. But the first battles had proven a truth that no one could deny. Humanity could fight. And if they could fight, then perhaps they could win. The first battles had scarred humanity, but they had also revealed something the Council had not expected. Earth was not broken, instead Earth was rising. The Council had believed humans fought only with weapons, but they soon learned humans fought with everything: wit, desperation, and imagination. In every corner of the war, new tactics appeared. Farmers turned fields into traps. Engineers turned mining tools into weapons. Civilians who had never seen a battlefield picked up arms with steady hands. The Council was powerful, but it was predictable. Their fleets were vast, their armies disciplined, yet they fought as they always had. Slow, certain, crushing. Humanity, small and desperate, moved like fire. They struck quickly, vanished into shadows, then struck again where the enemy was weakest. At the asteroid belt of Karos, human pilots used debris fields to their advantage. Council cruisers, too large and heavy, could not follow. Small human fighters darted between rocks, firing missiles and laying traps. Entire squadrons of alien warships were shredded by stones and explosions in the darkness. On the icy world of Haleth, a group of human soldiers faced an army 10 times their size. Instead of retreating, they lured the invaders onto frozen lakes, then detonated charges beneath the ice. The alien machines sank into the black water, never to rise again. Every victory was small, but each one carried weight. For the Council, every loss was humiliation. For humanity, every win was hope, and hope was more dangerous than any weapon. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Enslaved worlds listened. Species who had long forgotten freedom heard the stories of humans standing against giants. The spark grew brighter. Some even began to aid humanity in secret, passing information, smuggling supplies, feeding the fire. The Council tried harder. They brought larger fleets, more advanced weapons, harsher punishments. Yet the harder they struck, the stronger humanity became. Each city burned only fueled the desire for vengeance. Each fallen soldier became a symbol. Each destroyed colony became a reason to fight harder. Unity grew where division had once lived. On Earth, nations that once distrusted each other now worked hand in hand. Old rivalries vanished. Scientists from every land built together, combining knowledge into new weapons and faster ships. Engineers worked day and night to improve defenses. Doctors and medics from every culture stood side by side, saving lives with what little they had. Humanity was no longer a scattered collection of nations. It was one people standing against the galaxy. In a quiet speech to her people, a leader on Earth said, "The Council does not understand why we fight. They believe survival is enough. But we fight for more than survival. We fight for freedom, for dignity, for the right to dream without chains. That is why they cannot win. Because to us this is not just war. It is life itself." Her words spread like fire. Soldiers carried them into battle. Children repeated them in the streets. The galaxy heard them too. For the first time in centuries, the Council felt something it had nearly forgotten. Fear. Not fear of ships or weapons, but fear of an idea. The idea that their rule could be broken. That a single world, small and defiant, could inspire others to rise. The war was not over. The Council still held more power, more fleets, more soldiers, but the tide had begun to shift. Humanity was no longer fighting to survive. Humanity was fighting to win. And in the hearts of billions, one thought grew louder every day. We can do this. We can break the chains of the galaxy. The Council had created a war to crush humanity. Instead, they had awakened a rebellion that could shake the stars. The war was far from over, but already the galaxy had changed. Where once Earth was ignored, now it was feared. Where once the Council's rule seemed unshakable, now cracks had begun to appear. From the Council's throne worlds came fury. From Earth's colonies came fire. And in the space between, stories traveled faster than fleets. Stories of humans who stood against impossible odds. Stories of miners who turned rocks into weapons. Of farmers who defended their fields with courage. Of children who grew up not with fear but with pride in the word human. The Council had wanted to make Earth an example. They succeeded, but not in the way they imagined. Earth became an example not of weakness, but of defiance. In the ruins of cities, humanity rebuilt. In the silence of space, they trained. Factories glowed through the night, not to create luxuries, but to forge warships and armor. New weapons, faster than before, sharper than before, were born from desperation and genius. Every scar, every grave, every tear became fuel for the fire. The Council believed humans fought for survival. They still did not understand. Humanity fought for more than survival. Humanity fought for freedom, for dignity, for the right to stand, unbowed in a galaxy that demanded kneeling. It was not only soldiers who carried this fight. Teachers, scientists, medics, artists, all played their part. Some gave their minds, some gave their hands, some gave their lives. In every act, there was the same promise: we will not give up. And so, on a night lit by the pale glow of Earth's moon, humanity gathered. Not only in one place, but across every colony, every station, every outpost in the stars. People stood before banners, before fires, before the endless sky. They spoke one vow, one oath that bound them together. On Earth, in the great assembly hall, a leader raised her voice. The Council has tried to break us. They burned our homes. They slaughtered our people. They believed fear would silence us. But instead, they gave us unity. Instead, they gave us strength. And now, we swear, this oath: humanity will fight until the stars themselves burn out. We will fight until every chain is broken. We will fight until freedom is no longer a dream, but a truth across the galaxy. Billions of voices rose in answer. Soldiers shouted it as they stood ready for war. Children whispered it before they slept. Colonists carved it into stone, painted it on walls, carried it in their hearts. It became more than words. It became a promise. Even far beyond human space, enslaved species heard the oath. In secret caves, in dark alleys, in hidden places where the Council's eye could not reach, they repeated the human vow. For the first time in ages, they dared to dream. The Council felt the tremor spreading. They had wanted to crush Earth quickly. Instead, they had awakened something that threatened to spread like wildfire across the stars. They had made humanity into a symbol, and symbols are harder to kill than armies. The war stretched ahead, long and bloody. No one could say how many would live, how many would die, or how many worlds would burn. But one thing was certain: humanity would not surrender. They had made their choice. They had sworn their oath. The galaxy would remember forever the moment when a small world, fragile and young, looked into the eyes of an empire and said, "We will not kneel, we will not break. We are human, and we will be free." And with that vow, the stars themselves seemed to tremble.